So here we have Goliath. That's the main character of the show. He's in the intro. He's the character screaming. He gets most of the screen time. He is what you call like the alpha male of this Gargoyle clan. And I mean, you talk about what I saw in the show. I think like this is one of the things that are not subversive. It's very clear that he is the society they live in is hierarchical, and that they have like these alpha characters who are on top of the hierarchy for a reason. It's not something that they've that like you have in some Disney films where you have like these bumbling idiot people who are on top of either businesses or kingdoms. Like I think about Aladdin, for instance, like the king in Aladdin, who's like this little midget guy who's a complete bumbling idiot. You have a lot of those characters that it's kind of meant to appeal to kids, where kids think that their parents are stupid or something. But with this guy, it's very clear that he has superior physiognomy to the other. He's like sort of Conan the Barbarian, imagined as a type of gargoyle character, but he's also quite intelligent and able to adapt. So,
yes.
I mean, this is the sort of thing that, okay, what do I see in the show? Let's say they actually will try to subtly influence people of the value of reading, right? You'll see that the characters who are movers and shakers, like who are powerful in the show, spend time reading books, and the characters who are like lower
knowledge,
lower underlings are watching television. And this is it's not something that they're stating explicitly, but it's something that you see constantly, that when this character is not when he's not out fighting people, he is in a library like by himself, just sitting and reading. Whereas a lot of these like lower level gargoyles, the first thing that they do when they've sort of made themselves accustomed to life in 1997 New York is to start watching television, right? And a lot of the season 1 plots that come from that is basically them watching television, trying to emulate stuff. That's where you get the
then getting into trouble. Yeah.
Yes, the episode with the gun. That's
the gun.
That's one of the most where you have the one of these underling lower ranking gargoyles who's called Broadway, right? Because they don't have names, but when they move into the future, they have to have names to interface with people. So they end up just naming themselves, and they just take the names of street signs and monuments in
Hudson
in New York. Yes,
the old guy.
So they basically pick their own names. The reason that Goliath has his name is that he was just given that name because he was like the representative of the Gargoyle clan 1,000 years ago, and that seemed like to be the most sensible name for him. But like the episode with this Broadway character, who's like a bit more of this fat, bumbling idiot gargoyle, is that he starts watching television and going to cinema, and he's watching like Clint Eastwood films and so on. And
it feels like they wanted an excuse to animate Western, because they spend way too much time in that episode animating an entire like Western showdown as he's watching it on TV.
Yes, and I mean, I think he's watching it on TV. He's watching it in the cinema. He's fascinated by the gun. He tries to just do a lot of finger gunning around the place, and then he goes to visit the character that's in the bottom picture here, like the female character, and she's a police officer, right? So she has like a gun in her jacket, and he just pulls out the gun and starts firing it around the apartment, and he like shoots her in the back.
He accidentally shoots her in the stomach or something. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And she has to go to the hospital, and
he almost
told
dies.
That she may not survive that. And it's a pretty sort of heavy thing to put in a kids cartoon. And this could have been, completely botched. It could have been turned into some like anti-gun type sentiment, but it's not, right? It's more of like this general cautionary tale about gun safety, and it doesn't try to moralize too much.
Exactly. Glow in the Dark says, for $10, thank you so much. Conan the Barbarian was originally smart because he had to fight dragons and wizards. He couldn't just muscle a dinosaur or a bunch of fireballs, so he had to go get some intelligence to win. That's correct.
You can only get so far with strength, right? I mean, you see that with a lot of these animals that were, like we talked about, like the big game that were hunted by human beings. They only got so far with size.
Exactly. And before I forget, he's voiced as well by the booming voice of Keith David, as it says in the Chad Goliath meme here. Who
Yeah,
I'll provide some of the nerdery here. I think is the voice of the Arbiter from Halo and Commander Anderson or something from Mass Effect.
yeah, he was in Mass Effect. I mean,
So
he has a
if
lot
you
of.
heard him before, this is probably one. He's been in a lot of stuff, of course, but
I absolutely guarantee that you've heard him somewhere. Like it's the likelihood if you've been kind of a millennial or a zoomer and you play video games and you watch Western media that you've not heard this guy's voice at some point is quite unlikely. He also voiced other like cartoons at the same time, like Spawn and similar
yes,
things. I think the interesting thing is that like this is as white as he's ever sounded, right? Because he has to lean so heavily into this
yeah. Yeah,
Shakespearean angle.
he holds back his jive.
Yeah, there's very little Africanisms and
Yeah.
very little kind of shadiness because he usually plays a lot more of these villain characters. I think most recently you have the Disney film The Frog Princess, where he plays the Dr. Facilieri. That's the villain character there with the song like The Friends on the Other Side. I mean, with that character, and usually the way they do these characters is that they'll have some general description. Okay, this is going to be a muscular gargoyle who will be like maybe 80 years old, 100 years old, and so on. And based on the voice actor they get, they end up changing the backstory and a bit of the facial features and so on. And they
Yes.
did this in the show with most of the characters, but not so much with this character. He is not really, in any sense that I can see, made to look like Keith David's, unlike the other characters that we get into. And as you see, like with the upper picture here, there are a lot of episodes with body transformations in the show where there's this kind of spell that's cast that's turning gargoyles into human beings, and he is basically imagined as this kind of like olive-skinned white man. So
Mm.
at least that's kind of how he's pictured in the show. I mean, I've seen, it's coming to me now with Keith Davis is that he's been used in a lot of John Carpenter's movies. Is that something you're into?
Oh yeah. Let me see if I can pull up.
So
Here we
he's
go.
like the
Here.
black guy and They Live, right?
Yeah.
When they're
Yeah.
having a fight, Roddy Piper, like, oh, put on the glasses. I'm not putting on the fucking glasses. And they're like, that's
Yeah.
him. And he's in The Thing. They use him in a lot of these Carpenter movies. I think that's something that we should look into on another show. Actually, I really like John Carpenter. I think there's a lot there. I think my favorite Keith David's role is actually Requiem for a Dream. That's like one of my favorite movies, even though it's quite
I have not
difficult to
seen that.
watch. No, it's a Darren Aronofsky film, right? It's the movie about drug addicts, basically,
Right.
and how they end up. And in that movie, he just plays like this kind of sleazy businessman who just pays one of these drug addicted women to do let's just say some sexual stuff for money, but he just plays it so excellently that yeah, it's very convincing. I think that's one of the few movies, Requiem for a Dream, where like Jared Leto actually has a good role. I think that's one of his most famous role where he just plays like this junkie. Let's see.
Do we have
Let's
anything
see if
more
I.
on Goliath?
Yeah, I had some other points here that I actually thought like why I like this character so much. I mean, if you look at cartoons, particularly for that era, I think that this is the closest that you get to a kind of reactionary hero. And like you talked about, what do I see in the show? Because in the 90s, it would have been so easy to make this character into one of these typical stereotypes that you see. You could have made him into an anti-hero, right? This kind of like hard drinking, Wolverine, kind of antisocial, unnecessarily violent character with bad mental health. You could have made him snarky, right? He would have been like this kind of eye-rolling character who were constantly ironic, breaking the fourth wall and so on. Or you could have made him into like more of this bumbling idiot kind of comedic foil character where other people just have to come and clean up after him. And they, all of that's avoided. All of these really annoying kind of traps, in my view, have been avoided with this character. And they just made him into like this kind of Chad, smart, strong hero who was taken from 1,000 years ago, put into the future, and tries to basically, in the face of all the odds, make his in-group survive and preserve as many of the traditions as he can. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like my argument for like why I think he's like the most compelling reactionary cartoon hero. I mean, you have to compare him to Batman, right? But I think this guy has like better mental health.
And he falls for a Latina, so he fits in perfectly with the online right.
Yes, he does. He's a colonizer as well. But no, I mean that's kind of the joke that I've made previously on the show, where it's like almost everyone that I know, like people who live in Oslo, like men who are like middle class guys who work in tech jobs. They will be with like a Norwegian woman, have 2.4 kids, and when they pass 50, they're just like so sick of the Norwegian woman that they just divorce and they'll marry some younger like Latina Asian woman or something like that. It just seems like a recurring pattern. And like with this guy, I caught myself almost finding like he's in the same pattern where he's been like with this gargoyle woman for like hundreds of years, and he's so sick of like dealing with this gargoyle bullshit that he wanted like a young Latina. Just to, when he's in he's going into his twilight years, so he could just live without like a 29-year-old hot Latina woman. Right, yeah, I think that's enough on Goliath, and we can go look at.
Did you make character. The Chad Goliath meme?
No,
by the way,
I found it on the I found it on the one of the Gargoyles.
The texts
Reddits,
are a bit, but I'm talking about like the translation of the Chad into the Gargoyle.
Really no, but I made the photo on the upper right actually. I would have made it with the teeth. Actually, like it's actually a cosplayer, but I tried to splice him with the Giga Chad just for effect. Yeah. So if you flip the boards, then we have like the next main character.
Julius says this is why concepts like the will of the people are generally foolhardy warlords. People wanted you guys to speak about anime and shit. Now people complaining about speaking about gargoyles and to do cuisine. Yeah, well, I don't really take. We do sometimes the polls just to gauge sort of like interest, but everything we sort of propose are things that we are interested in talking about. Specifically for the anime thing, I think it's just funny that the same people will call it cringe and give me, 30 seconds later, they're posting recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, the anime thing is coming back as well, right?
Yeah.
But we need some little bit more prep and planning for it.